Hello everyone, I hope you're doing okay. Today we're talking about the Seer Sage. The Sage that is going to heal you a little bit if you know what you're actually doing. Two brief disclaimers. First of all, I'm not an expert on this spec, I'm just a nerd. I play a lot of SWTOR. If there's anything that I missed, if you leave them down in the comment section below, I'm sure your fellow players would appreciate it. Secondly, Seer is an art, not a science. There's no rotation that I can teach you for this, but what I can do is equip you with knowledge of what your abilities are doing and how you can put them to best use depending on the situation you find yourself in. So let's jump right into it. The first thing we're going to be talking about is our tertiary stats. Very quickly, alacrity to 7.2%, you should be ready to roll. Throw everything else into crit and you should be golden. For our tacticals, One for All is pretty fantastic. I use it pretty much every single time. There's not a really good reason to pick anything else. It's just free extra healing. Unmatched Haste is great for the extra mental alacrity. Very, very strong. And then finally, I like personally Revitalized Package for the extra free healing. Some people like Dynamic Force for the extra force potency. Frankly, it's okay. Not great, not terrible. I'd rather take the passive instead though. Looking over to our combat styles. Remember when I said it's an art, not a science? Well, we start right off the bat with a couple of very good options. I personally like Keeper of the Peace. I think it's more useful than the other two options. However, Keeper of the Peace is much more of a PvP or raid healing situation. If you want straight up single target heals, you can take Sustained Aura or Harnessing Call or Hastening Call if you need the straight up burst heals. It's kind of up to you. Personally though, I think Keeper of the Peace is much more sustainable over most forms of content. Cloud Mind take pretty much every time. It's very, very strong. Rejuvenating Aura is great for big AoE heals. It's very strong. In solo content, or if you don't care about your group, you can take Force Defense. It's very strong. Gives you a little bit of extra DR. If you're in a group content, though, take Force Empowerment. You're like the healer. You have to be the raid buff person. Take Force Empowerment. You're very, very welcome. Force Ability is very strong for just straight up, moving around and doing heals. It's very nice. I like Metaphysical Alacrity. I like the extra movement speed we get from it. It's very nice. However, some people like Valorous Spirit. It's kind of up to you, though. I personally like the extra movement speed. Phase Walk is kind of the default option here. Some people like to take Force Lip for the extra stun. It's kind of up to you. I won't be mad at you either way if you pick one of these two targets. Finally, I like Egress for PvP, and then if you're in PvE, take Mind Ward, and that's kind of all there is to know about that. If you're going to be leveling with this spec, you're going to have to learn how to do some damage. Let's talk about it very, very quickly. The most obviously damaging abilities are our Mind Crush and our Weaken Mind for our 2 dots, and then throw on Telekinetic Throw, Disturbance, and Project, and then just kind of rotate between Telekinetic Throw, Disturbance, and Project over and over and over again, and you should be ready to rock and roll. If you have any AoE situations, you're going to hit this Force Quake button, and then when that's done, you're going to hit Force Quake again. And then when that's done, you're going to hit Force Quake again over and over again until the target is dead. That's really all there is to know about doing DPS. Again, just Mind Crush, get your 2 dots on the target, assuming you don't evade. 2 dots, and then rotate between Telekinetic Throw, Disturbance, and Project over and over and over again until the target is dead. If you're going to be healing in this spec, good luck. All right, let's go and actually talk about some heals, though, because, we are like a healer, so heals. As a Sage healer, we have essentially 2 foundational heals. The first is our Preserved Force Armor. You apply armor to the target, it will absorb 30,000 damage, which is very nice. It's also going to apply these little stacks of Soothing Protection onto the target. What this means is that when your armor collapses, when it takes that 30k damage, it will heal them for about 1.5k times the amount of stacks that they currently have. Now, the more you heal the target, these stacks will actually start to go down. So just be aware, when those stacks numbers goes down, it just means that they're going to take less healing when the armor collapses. Don't really worry about it though. It's more just how much heal do you get at the end of the day when you take enough damage. So don't really worry about that secondary mechanic. However, you can't just be spamming your armor on the target over and over and over again, because when you apply an armor to the target, they're going to get force imbalanced. This lasts for 15 seconds, which means that for the next 15 seconds, you can't apply an armor to them. Once those 15 seconds wear off, though, we can, apply another armor right away. Armors are very strong for us. It's going to essentially preemptively stop your monkey DPS from taking damage when they stand in stupid things. So try to be keeping as many armors up as humanly possible. The second heal that we have that's very important to us is our Rejuvenate. Now, Rejuvenate on its own doesn't do a whole lot of healing. It does an initial 7 to 10k, not great, not terrible. Heals for 12k over the next 15 seconds, not great, not terrible. However, it gives us this buff here called Clairvoyance. Clairvoyance provides a lot of buffs. It essentially supercharges all of our other healing abilities. We'll talk about them as they come up. Just know that we want to be smashing Rejuvenate pretty much as often as possible for this Clairvoyance buff. It has like a 5-second cooldown, does a minor amount of healing, but it will supercharge all of our other healing abilities. So, smash it, all right? Smash Rejuvenate, it's good. So let's now talk about our actual other healing abilities. Our most important one is going to be our Wandering Mend. Wandering Mend on its own. You apply it to the target. They will get this little buff called Wandering Mend. Now, as they take damage, they're going to get a little bit of healing, and then the Wandering Mend will jump to another target. If that target takes damage, it'll jump to another target, etc., for a total of 5 times. Now, this is fine for just like passive group heals, especially if the entire group is taking damage. However, we can supercharge this using our Rejuvenate. Remember, supercharge Rejuvenate. If we hit supercharge and then hit our Wandering Mend, you're going to see, boop, it instantly jumps to all 5 targets back to back without having them take any heals. Now, it is kind of a smart heal, so it's not just going to like heal a target that's already at full. It will jump between targets that have, healing needs. So what this means is that if you apply this to say your tanks, a supercharge, a Wandering Mend, it'll basically heal both your tanks back to back very, very quickly. It's good. It's a very strong burst heal ability. It's a chef's kiss. Very nice. So, Wandering Mend, straight up, single target and group heals built into one, especially when it's supercharged. However, if you want straight up single target heals, we have our Healing Trance. Healing Trance is a channeled ability. We can use it on the move because of the utilities that we took, and it does a couple of things for us. The first thing that it does is straight up like 40,000 healing, which is, very, very nice. Additionally, it's going to be giving us these little buffs of, there it is, Resplendence. What Resplendence does is it makes your Vindicate activate without any negative downsides. So what am I talking about here? Force management on a Seer Sage is very, very tricky. It will completely destroy itself if you allow it to. So in order to regenerate this force, we usually have to use this ability here called Vindicate. Vindicate regenerates 40 force, but builds these stacks of Weary. So you get the temporary benefit of instant force. However, the more Weary stacks you have, the slower your force regenerates, which is obviously bad. You have to use your, Vindicate to get some healing, some force backs, but you're not going to have that long-term force generation. However, when you apply your Healing Trance, and whenever it crits, you get these stacks of Resplendence, so that way we can use our Vindicate without generating any of those force negative stacks. TLDR. Whenever Healing Trance crits, extra force. Good. Extra force is good. Very, very good. And we can make the crit even more by using our Supercharge. Rejuvenate, Supercharge, remember, we talked about that before. Yep, still on the same page. So if you Supercharge a Healing Trance, it has a 25% extra crit chance, which means that it's going to crit more, which means you're going to get more Resplendence, which means you're going to get more force. That's very, very good. All right? So if you ever start to run out of force, you can use a Supercharged Healing Trance to build hopefully up to 3 stacks of your Resplendence, so that way you can start to rebuild that force deficit. Additionally, Healing Trance has the benefit of spreading our Rejuvenate. So we talked about before where we took this little Rejuvenating order right here. If we apply Rejuvenate to the target and then use a Healing Trance, you're going to see here it's going to spread to all my friends in the area for extra, essentially free AoE heals. It's very, very nice for that little bit of extra healing to top off your morons that keep taking damage. So, what have we learned so far? Wandering Mend on its own applies to a target, heals people as it takes damage. However, if we supercharge it, if we say use our Rejuvenate and then have to vent for 5 seconds here and say we supercharge it, it will instantly heal pretty much most of your tanks back to back for a lot of healing very quickly. Healing Trance on its own, pretty strong single target heals. When it crits, it builds Resplendence, which we can use to regenerate our force. And if we hit Rejuvenate, it's going to make our Healing Trance crit even more, which means we can get even more force, which is very, very nice. It's also going to be spreading around our Rejuvenate to multiple targets. It's very, very nice, both single target, force regeneration, and AoE heals. But it's not the strongest AoE heal that we have, because next up we have Salvation. Salvation is a gigantic AoE heal. You can see here, put Salvation down. Oh, I messed it up. That's a supercharge. So essentially, you put Salvation down. Normally, it has like a 2-second cast. Let's see if I can, vamp for 3 more seconds. Here we go. Put down supercharge. It has like a 2-second cast time. Heals everyone in the area. It's pretty darn nice. However, as we saw before, if we supercharge our Salvation, it has no cast time. So that means we can put it down instantly. So instead of sitting here and waiting for that 2-second whole thing to cast, bump that. If we hit our Rejuvenate, and then we can instant cast our boop, big old Salvation, and do a whole bunch of healing very quickly to our entire raid team. Additionally, when we use our Salvation, we're going to get an instant cast and essentially extra heals on our Benevolence. Especially at high levels, we will only be clicking Benevolence when it glows. It's single target heals, doesn't do a whole lot for us. It's a great way to sink a whole lot of force very quickly. So hit it when it glows. No other reason. We make it glow by using our Salvation, either instant cast or hard casted like this. It glows. It does a fair bit of single target healing. Very nice. Salvation is the only way we make it glow. We can also make it glow through the use of Keeper of the Peace. Keeper of the Peace is probably our strongest single target one-shot heal here, but with Keeper of the Peace is actually 2. It could also be known as Deliverance, depending on what you take down here. Just know that big single target heals, all right? That's all you need to know. Big, long, 2-second cast single target heals. Boop, 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 boop. Especially on tanks, it's very nice, and it makes your Benevolence instantly cast. It's very strong. However, we can supercharge our Keeper of the Peace by giving it the Rejuvenate, and now it will only have a 1.5-second cast. So we went from that big old 2-second cast to when we supercharge it, suddenly we have a 1.5-second cast to be getting that healing off just a little bit quicker. So those are your key abilities. Let's wrap them up. Let's go through this one more time to make sure we're all on the same page. Force Armor on the target, absorbs damage. Very nice. Rejuvenate, minor amount of healing, but supercharges all of abilities, so we should be smashing it as often as possible. Wandering Mend, big both single target and AoE heals, very strong, especially when supercharged. Healing Trance, when supercharged, does a whole lot of crits. Every time it crits, it gives us our Resplendence. We use our Resplendence to regenerate our force using our Vindicate. Very, very nice. Next up, we have our big AoEs, which we can use through Salvation, which can be either hard casted or it can be single casted using Rejuvenate. I'm sorry, not single cast, just instant casted by supercharging it with Rejuvenate. And then the next time we go to use our Salvation, hippity hoppity, single target AoE with our, I'm sorry, not single target. I can't talk today. Instant cast Salvation is now our property. Salvation also makes us cast our Benevolence instantly. We only kick Benevolence when it glows because, frankly, it doesn't do a whole lot for us other than destroy our force if we don't. Finally, we have our Keeper of the Peace. Big single target heals. Very, very nice. Has very long cast time, though. But if we use Rejuvenate, it has a slightly shorter cast time, which is nice. It also makes our Benevolence glow. I wish there was more I could be teaching about this, but frankly, there's not. It's going to be your job to go out into the world and actually put these into practice. We have 4 key heals, and then we supercharge it with Rejuvenate. It's kind of all there is to know. I wish I could tell you more. There's really not. However, there is other ways that we can be buffing our heals in the form of our offensive cooldowns. For example, Mental Alacrity heal is going to give us 20% alacrity, which means that our usual cast times will be reduced significantly. So if I use Mental Alacrity and then I use my Keeper of the Peace, suddenly, 1.6 seconds, that's not bad. What if we supercharge it? Well, if we supercharge it, it's like a 1.2 second cast. Suddenly our Healing Trance has like a 2-second cast time. It's very nice. It's an easy way to be very quickly healing your team and especially regenerating that force. The more alacrity we have, the faster we regenerate our force. It's very nice. So we want to be spamming our mental alacrity pretty much as often as possible. Now we can also be getting our mental alacrities back faster by using our force speed. If you remember, we took the Unmasked Haste package here, which means that every time you use force speed, the cooldown of mental alacrity is reduced by 5 seconds, which means that mental alacrity can be back like about every minute 15 or so. So it's very strong. You want to be spamming force speed pretty much as often as possible, even if you're standing still. So that way we get more mental alacrities, which means we get more healing. It's very, very nice. The second offensive cooldown we have is our Force Potency. Force Potency on its own will give you essentially 2 free crits on any heal you want. Now, this can be used in a couple of ways. It can be used in, say, like a Keeper of the Peace for that big single target crit, which is very, very nice. Or if you're running out of force, you remember previously we talked about how force potency is going to give us all crits, and healing trance will give us, essentially super crits. We can use our force potency on our healing trance, which is going to give it a massive chance to crit, and then build all those stacks of respondents, and then that way it'll help us with our force management. Kind of up to you on how you want to use it. I usually use it just with our healing trance, so that way we get the big healing trance heal off, and we get those 3 stacks of force management. So that's kind of how I like to use it myself, but it's kind of up to you. All right, wrap it up very quickly. One more time, because repetition is everything, especially when you're learning something new. Armor on everyone that you can give it. You can only be applied after force imbalance falls off. Rejuvenate, smash it as often as possible. It will supercharge all your abilities. Wandering Mend, great single target burst ability. Healing Trance, spreads our rejuvenate, does a whole lot of single target healing, gives us extra stacks of force management. Salvation, big AoE heals. When supercharged, it is instantly cast, which is very nice. And finally, our Keeper of the Peace, big single target heals. When supercharged, it casts faster, very nice. And then we just hit Benevolence when it glows, and that's literally all there is to know. I wish that there was more. Talk very quickly about offensive cooldowns here. We have our Cloud Mind. Cloud Mind will give us a flat 25% damage reduction. Not great, not terrible. Fortunately, though, we're a healer, so that way we can kind of like heal through all of our own problems. We also obviously have our armor. We talked about that previously. We also have our force barrier. Now, I mentioned previously how if you use Vindicate over and over and over again, when you don't have those stacks of free force, you get these stacks of Weary, which is going to decrease our rate of regeneration here. It's very sad, but we can use our force barrier to purge those stacks. Additionally, while we're in force barrier, we will take no damage, which is very nice, but we're also doing no healing. So this is kind of dangerous, especially for our team, because obviously, doing damage is very important for them, and doing healing is very important for us. So if we're not doing our job, they might be dying. So use barrier to either cheese mechanics or to purge those stacks of Vindicate should you build them. Finally, we have our phase walk. Phase walk, set your phase walk down somewhere. You run up 60 meters away. I'm going to come all the way over here, and then we can phase back, boop, and suddenly teleport back to our original location. It's a great way to juke players in PvP or perform, your job in PvE if you need to like get around the map fast, or if you have like actual mechanics to do. It's a great way to kind of preemptively be performing those mechanics. One last ability here in the form of our restoration. Restoration is our purge. If you're a new healer, please purge. Picture that you're like mid 2010s and you're just putting out a purge movie every year. In that same fashion, take inspiration from them and purge everything in sight. Purging is going to make your team take less damage, and at the end of the day, your team taking less damage makes your job a whole lot easier. So please, if you see anything that can be cleansed, please cleanse it. I beg of you. It'll make you better than like 75% of the healers out there if you know what your cleanse button is. Now, all this is great in theory, but let's actually go put this into practice and see how it's actually, working out. So I'll go find an Ephra, and then we'll wrap this thing up. All right? So I'm prepping to go into any fight. First of all, we're going to apply our armor to everyone beforehand, and then we're going to pretty much take it easy for the first couple of seconds. Most of the time when the first boss gets pulled, the tank doesn't really get clapped right away. So what you can do, you can throw a little DPS in there and then start actually worrying about, healing the team. Now, the core concept here is pretty straightforward. I'm sure we all can understand. Health bars go down, hit green buttons, bring health bars back up. So supercharging all of our Wandering Mans and all of our, big heal, big green buttons, like, it kind of just is what it is. However, a lot of the times what healing comes down to is crisis management. Say for this group, for example, we have no self-cleanses in this group, which means that cleansing is going to be the top priority, which is going to make this entire pull an absolute nightmare. So what we need to be doing is when the dot goes out, cleanse it as soon as possible, because we do not have any good ways to be cleansing those dots. So prioritizing tanks first, because if they take all the damage and die, then we're in serious trouble. And then prioritizing this Guardian, because he might have a self cleanse once in a while, but the Vanguard can fluff, so I kind of just let him fluff and do his thing and take a whole lot less damage. Duke is very unhappy for some reason. So, couple things to know about healing in general. It's a common misconception that the boss is the most dangerous part of your group. It's not. the most dangerous part of your group is your DPS, because DPS are morons. They will find ways to wipe your groups that you would never comprehend before. They will stand in stupid. They will not cleanse themselves. They will wander off into the middle of nowhere and say, I'm doing the most damage, and then get the entire team killed. They will taunt the boss and turn the boss around and murder your entire team. So, your job as a healer is to put your DPS in their place. And this works for a couple of reasons. First of all, every time a DPS messes up, it's your problem. All right, they're going to say something stupid along the lines of, oh, but I'm helping your heal parse. And you tell them that you'll help their DPS parse but by them staying alive, because they can't do damage if they're dead. You need to flame your DPS into actually like behaving properly. Otherwise, they're going to, stand in stupid and not cleanse themselves and do terrible things to your healing numbers. So by all means, flame your DPS. The second reason that this works is that every DPS lives in fear of having to get benched to heals. And so letting them know, like, hey, if you keep standing in stupid, you're going to heal next raid. That'll get them to act up and act nice relatively quickly. So those are your general rules for, containing your DPS morons. Now, as you can see here, not everything goes smoothly a lot of the time. When you're healing, a lot of things are kind of outside of your control. Your tanks have their own mechanics, so if they mess it up, there's not much you can do about it. The DPS have their mechanics where if they mess it up, there's not much you can do about it. You kind of have to sit here and just be along for the ride, and then crisis manage along the way. So right now you can tell Dot's going out, prioritizing who deserves to live, who deserves to die, finding ways to cleanse ourselves, like burying ourselves, etc. So yet they kind of crisis manage and make sure that the most dangerous part of the operation is getting taken care of first. For example, right now my tanks are not getting the heals that they need. I'm prioritizing healing them over healing my DPS. Even though my DPS aren't at full health, they're not the ones getting hit by the boss. Prioritizing your tanks, probably a lot more important than trying to keep all of our pesky DPS alive. You okay there, Duke? All right. That's all I have to say, though. Frankly, just hit the big green button, repeat until the health bars are full, or the entire team is dead. And then repeat. So just supercharge your healing abilities, get the fundamentals of what the healing abilities are actually doing, and you should be ready to rock and roll. This is the final guide that I'm recording. This is 48 of 48. I'm officially done with all the guides for every single class in the game. So it's kind of exciting. Thank you to everyone who's been here along the way. If you have any questions about this class or any others, feel free to leave them down in the comment section below. I'll get back to you as soon as humanly possible. Or whenever I decide to get around to it. It kind of is hit or miss right now. So, yeah. Thanks for sticking along for the crazy 48 guide ride. Hope you enjoy yourselves and have a grand old day. Take care. Bye-bye.